Small-scale and emerging farmers often cite access to land, funding, and input infrastructure as barriers to entry in the agricultural sector. In an effort to address this, government introduced the Land Redistribution for Agricultural Development Program. The program, which is intended to help South Africans access land, has benefited some like the Steven family. The family, which has been in farming for more than 50 years, had never owned land until 2010. In the past, they leased land for limited periods, only to be evicted once the lease agreement was up. This meant that the family would invest many years in cultivating land they would never own. The Steven say they've never truly seen enough returns in their other farming projects until they owned their own farm.
When you're doing intensive crop farming like us, then it's much easier to have your own farm, because our kind of farming, you're going to build up the soils, you're going to build up the farm. So if you're doing that on a lease farm, you don't have a benefit at the end. So it's best to have your own farm for crop farming. Unless you've got a long lease, like a 25, 30-year lease at a good rental rate, it's fine. But if you don't have a long lease, short-term lease, by the time you do a turnaround, you don't see anything, you know.
The Steven family also struggled to secure funding after they had located the farm they are currently operating on. However, with the assistance of the Land Bank, they managed to get grant funding from Land Affairs, the Agricultural Development Agency, and a loan from the government financial institution. The family also overcame the hurdle of access to input infrastructure by using the proceeds from its previous projects to get seeds, fertilizers, irrigation facilities, and farm machinery. They also used a recapitalization loan from the Department of Rural Development to build a packing shed, which means the family is able to harvest, wash and pack their crops before transporting them to their clients. But this is not the end of the family's challenges. The Steven still need funds to build a processing facility that will enable them to add value to their crops.
We need more funding to access a proper agro-processing facility, so we can get into doing pre-packing, processing of adding value to the products that we are growing, to pack them into smaller quantities and market them, you know, add value to everything that we are growing. So that will help out, because the funding that the Department of Rural Development has given up is just enough to finish the building only. So you need cold rooms, you need cold room, you need washing machines to wash, and processing facilities and all that, which is available from Department of ADA and Rural Development, but to access it is difficult, you know.
Adding value to the farmer's raw material entails changing its physical state, like processing maize into millie meal. This then helps increase the value of the product and the farming business. According to UKZN Professor Steven Worth, this would address the issue of access to market. Worth says value is an essential part of the value chain that seems to have been overlooked by policymakers. He says excluding farmers from the value chain positions them as producers of cheap raw material and not market owners.
We talk about market access, big issue, access to markets. We never talk about market ownership. And so why do we not talk about market ownership? Because somebody else owns that market. Everybody knows that the only people who make money in agriculture are the people who value add, or add value to the product. The farmers don't make the money. And so we have policies that give emerging farmers access to markets, but they become a cheap source of raw material, or a source of cheap raw materials that somebody else makes great profits on. Why don't we have policies that say, we're going to help you own that market and teach you how to run that market, not just to access it? That would be a hugely different approach to agricultural development. And it would, of course, upset the power structures in the economy. When Thabo Mbeki was president and he talked about needing to help farmers get into the first economy, The one thing he didn't say was that they must own that first economy. He just wanted them to have access to it while the top 1-2% still control it. So for me, the policies are really designed to keep people back. They're not really designed to help people move forward.
Worth describes market ownership as farmers adding value to their produce as opposed to supplying big manufacturers with raw materials. He uses the mohair industry as an example, saying while Lesotho has positioned itself as the largest supplier of the wool, the goat farmers have not created great wealth for themselves, while the companies that process mohair have. Mbalenhle Mthethwa, SABC News, Johannesburg.